my gorgeous peeps. I'm here in sunny Manchester. We're here at a Cloudwater's, which is a brewery. And here, oh God, I'm trying to do this all. Let me see if I'm even seeing myself. Yeah, I'm here. And we are going on, let me move, a beer tour, okay? So, I'll get back to you. You know I'm with Phil, so I'll get Phil to do a lot of the talking, okay?
This is Cloudwater legendary Manchester Microbrewery, and it's a tour of their facilities.
Okay,
and,
so we're going to head on in.
Yeah.
This is, you can even see the vat, so let's go on inside here and see what we got happening. How excited are you? You act like it's Christmas.
I am very excited. I'm just a big fan of this brewery's beers.
So you like this beer?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Really big fan.
Okay. So this is Sharita getting her complimentary drink. Complimentary drink. Let me see. Hell no. Like I tell y'all, this is for Phil. Ain't got nothing to do with me. I'm just taking care of my husband. A bystander. Here you go, Phil.
We'll save that for later. You can look after that one, Andrew.
I'll look after it. No,
guard it with your life.
Guard it with your life. Okay, guys. Wow. Look at all of these cask ales. Pretty cool. That looks pretty cool. All right. Wow, lots of people are turning up. Looks like this is a quite popular tour. So we will see how we go. All right. Okay, we've just left the main room. We're heading out. I've asked how much I can film. I've been told he'll tell me what I can and what I can't. So we'll just see how we go. But this is the beginning of our tour. And there's a lot of people. Quite mixed group.
Yeah.
Welcome. Just a few things. I'm not going to be doing the tour today. It's going to be the brewery manager, Mark, so you're probably in the best hands for the job, to be honest. Just a few things. Privacy and cameras. You're more than welcome to film in here, take photos of any equipment, any branding, anything like that. Just not labels, recipe sheets. There's some beers in here that have not been released to the general public yet, and if this comes out on social media, we've missed the trick and it's not good luck. So if you could do that for me, that's great. You're going to be getting a few samples throughout, so keep your glasses with you. It's alright, I'll grab you some more.
Okay. He finished his. And why would he bring an empty glass?
It's okay. If anyone wants a bathroom at any point, it's just through this door on your left. Like I say, go whenever. And in the case of an emergency, the fire exits are the far left and right. I feel like a hostess every time I do that. But in the meantime, I'm going to go get Mark for you. Enjoy. You've all got tokens as well, so I'll see you when you get back, alright?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. You keep them. I'm keeping them. These guys. I'll get you 2 more glasses as well, alright?
Alrighty, thank you. So where's your glass, Phil?
I don't have it with me. I finished it and left it on the table.
Okay, fancy glass for me. Oh, that's cool. Oh, I think you'll be coming home with me. This is where I'm keeping my glass.
So like I say, I'm called Mark. I'm the brewery manager here at Cloudwater. I've been working here about 4.5 years. We've been making beer for about just over that. So I joined about 3 months after we started. We started in February 2014, 2015. One of those. Say some maths here. One of those. Anyway. We make what we call modern seasonal beer. So we've been making we think it's quite progressive, but often using seasonal ingredients, seasonal styles. We've made a lot of beer over the years, different beers that is. Probably about 650 odd different beers, I think.
Wow.
600. It's slightly fewer now because we're repeating to recipes, which we never used to do. But now we've got more of a signature range of IPA, Pale Ale, DH Pale, Maxine next door. So we're doing those more regularly now. Whereas in the past, the first 3 years or so, 3.5 years, we just did a new beer each time, which got very exhausting a little bit for both us and for consumers. But we still do a lot of one-offs, but we also do quite a few use beers that we repeat and try to have a consistent experience for people if they want to just have something that they've had before and want to enjoy. We still tweak those recipes and try and improve them all the time, but they vary a bit less than the other ones we make. I'm basically going to go through the entire brewing process. If you've got any questions at any point, please ask. If I'm being too technical or not technical enough, please just shout at me, because I can get down rabbit holes, it's fine. But yeah, please ask questions, because otherwise I'll just ramble on about stuff and then we'll get bored. We'll try some samples from the tank later on, just to see how the beer tastes before we get it served at various different stages. And then we're going to go over and look at the packaging line and stuff later on. So usually I start with water. So basically there's 4 things usually that go into a beer: water, yeast, hops, and malt or barley. We use quite a lot of other things because we're not Germans obeying some weird purity law, which was decided in the 1800s before anyone realised that yeast existed, so that doesn't even get included in that. But we use a lot of other things. Sometimes we use fruit, we can use various additions like coconut, chocolate, things like that. Basically, we don't restrict ourselves to using anything in particular, but we try to use things that will make interesting beers. But in most of our beers, we will just use those 4 kind of ingredients. So we're going to start off with water. You can see over there we've got 2 massive new tanks. So this has all just been installed this week. So there's a lot of work going on. We're still welding the pipework up from it. But this is essentially a new reverse osmosis system. So previously we used to get our water just from mains water, which comes from the reservoirs in the Lake District. So it's pretty nice water. It's good to brew with. It's pretty soft. It doesn't have too many minerals in there that we don't want. But it has a few things we're not entirely happy with, which can get through to the final product. And so with this new system, we'll be able to essentially strip everything out of the water, get back to just water and nothing else in it, and then we can build it back up with a bunch of salts and acids and things like that to get the water profile we want. The water profile makes a really big difference to how a beer tastes. It's a thing that often people don't think about, but if you look historically at beer styles around the world, they've often been driven by the type of water that was available to people brewing them. So if you look at something like German Pilsner and Munich Helles and things like that, they're often driven by this type of water that was available to those people. It's very soft water, it's got very low mineral content, and it'll be very soft and delicate beer. You look at London, where they make historically made stouts and porters, and that's because water in London is absolutely shit.
Sure is.
Terrible for brewing, you really don't want to use it. So that's what they used to make. You can use it for other stuff, but it's not ideal. It's very hard water. You have to treat it quite a lot. It's also reasonably high in things like sulfates, which will cause higher bitterness and things like that. These days, it very much depends on where the water's coming from and things like that. In Burton-on-Trent, that's kind of where the classic British cask beer came from, and that's very high in sulfate. It's very drove the whole bitter, British bitter style of beer. In Manchester, it's like I said, it's pretty soft. You have a bunch of family brewers who've been around for a few hundred years, who've been making like Manchester pale ales and things like that, which tend to be a little bit softer than sort of Burton-on-Trent beers. And that's the kind of water we've been using, and it's really quite nice for brewing. We do add some other things on top of it. So like I say, we add various salt compounds. So we add things with chlorides in, things with sulfates, things with magnesium, calcium, and all these things make a difference to how the beer tastes at the end of the day. You could possibly need to know. Great, so that's water. We then have malt. So we tend to use a lot of British maltsters malt. British maltsters make fantastic malt. So we use a lot of domestic malt. Not very good at sort of Pilsner lager malts. We use German or Czech malt for that. But everything else we tend to use British malt. It comes from companies like Simpsons, who are based up in that way. I can't remember where. But it's not too far away. We can basically get like a week turnaround on our malt, which is pretty quick, versus a lot of American brewers who will buy British malt because it's really nice, and they have to get it shipped over, so it's rubbish for them. On the flip side, we have to buy hops in from America and New Zealand because they make really nice hops, and hops cost about 5 times as much as malt, so we lose out on that deal sadly, but anyway. We do have something, we make some really good fantastic ales with British malt, especially sort of the darker malts. So in most of our pale ales or IPAs, we'll be just using a lot of very low colour malt and not too much darker malt, but when we get to this time of year and we start making things like ambers and red ales and brown ales and porters and stouts and imperial stouts, we tend to use more highly coloured malt. So to make that, you basically roast it at a higher temperature, and you can get a bunch of different flavour profiles from that. Give you like roasty flavours, but also chocolatey flavours, toffee, biscuit, those kind of flavours you get in a malt-forward beer. You can get a lot of complexity from using a different bunch of malts. But like I say, in our hazy beers, we tend to mostly use pale ale malt. We also use a bunch of other things that aren't made from barley, so we use wheat and oats. And we use those because they tend to be very high in protein. That gives us the haze you get in a lot of our beers, but it also gives you a lot of body and mouthfeel and can carry a lot of flavour compounds through to the end of the process. So that's why we end up with hazy beers. When we first started about 5 years ago, hazy beers were generally a no-no. Anybody who got a hazy beer would get upset in a pub and send it back. Now, often people get upset if their beer isn't hazy. How times change very rapidly. But there was essentially a flip over a couple of years ago, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, when people started drinking these sort of hazy New England style IPAs and pale ales and realised they're actually quite nice. And decided that was a good thing to go for. A hazy, that's basically a pale malt, fresh malt, which is a very dark roasted malt. But this is probably about 700 degrees here, so it's really old.
This one?
There they go.
Yeah, so it depends. They have
You go get in the queue then. You can grab it. You want to smell it.
So they will harvest it different types of years, different types of malt.
Yeah.
Often there'll be like a middle vessel over here. So this is called the mash tun, and this is where we mash in. So this is basically the second part of the process of turning all those starches in the malt into sugars. We do it at somewhere between 60 to 75 degrees C. Put a bunch of water in there, put all the ground up malt, and that's the temperature the enzymes work at to break down these starches. The actual temperature you do it at makes a big difference to which enzymes are active. Some of them will break down the sugars into very simple sugars that are easily fermentable, and some of them will break it down to more complex sugars which are less fermentable. And that basically changes how much sugar you'll get in the beer, which will ferment out and won't ferment out with normal brewer's yeast. So if you mash at a very high temperature, you'll produce a lot of unfermentable sugar. You'll end up with a bit more sugar at the end of the process in the beer. So you'll end up with slightly sweeter beer, slightly less alcohol than you would otherwise have got. So for things like our pale ales and lower strength beers, we mash very high as we can. And that's because we want a lot of residual sugar at the end to give it a bit of body and mouthfeel. Because one of the hardest things to do when you're making like a 2.9% beer, for instance, is to try and give it some body and not taste really horrible and thin and disappointing. And so we mash very high to do that. We also use a lot of the oat and wheat again to try and give it some more body. And then when we're making something where we want to basically ferment all the sugar out, make it very dry, like a saison or something like that, we'll use a very low mash temperature, so maybe 60, 62 degrees C, and that will basically make a lot of fermentable sugars that the yeast can quite easily use up, and then you end up with basically no sugar at the end of the process with a very dry beer and a bit more alcohol. And you can control very accurately with the different temperatures what kind of profile you'll get of sugar. It has steam jackets around the outside, so we can change that temperature. The steam boiler is the big blue thing over in the corner. It runs at like 10 bar pressure, it's very scary, but it hasn't exploded yet, so right. You can salvage a lot of things with basically either time, putting more hops in, calling it something else, or putting it in a barrel and leaving it for a year. So that's a usual strategy for saving beers. But sometimes there's problems with the beer that you just cannot fix. If it's got infections that cause certain types of off flavors you don't really like, things like baby six, not a nice off flavor, you can never get back from that. But a lot of sours will have a bit a flavor like that if it goes a bit wrong. And there's other flavors like that, and then there's beer that gets infected with certain types of yeast that you know are just going to be bad, so you can throw it away. I mean, maybe we throw away 1 or 2 beers a year, I would say, like full tanks. And sometimes, but way more than that, we will adjust on the fly what we had planned to do based on what the beer's done, what we're tasting. I don't think not really thrown anything away this year yet, so it's coming up soon, I'm sure. So yeah, this is basically a big filtration system. So you put all the grain and liquid in here.
Oh, dripping.
Yeah, it's just nice and clean. And so you can see at the bottom, you can run look in a minute, but it's got a big filter bed, and that's just to stop the grain going through. And there's also rakes, and that's to basically agitate the mash if it gets stuck. So the point of this step is to essentially turn the grain itself into its own filter. So you end up with a bunch of grain, and it forms a nice loose structure, and it lets all the liquid come through and filter it out like a sandbed essentially. And all the grain stays in there, and all the liquid goes through, which is what you really want. If you do it, that's the stage where we do add bittering. So Historically, beers had hops added to it to act as a preservative. And you put the hops into the boil, and there's some chemicals in there which aren't bitter to start with, but when they boil, they will turn into this bittering compound. It's called isoalpha acid, if you want to know. It's very exciting. And how much hops you put in there will change how bitter it is, but you don't really need too much to actually have that preservative effect. So as we've made beers more towards this sort of soft New England style, we've reduced our bitterness quite a lot. We used to initially make very bitter beers, and we kind of dialed that way back down. So you still get that preservative effect, but it balances well with certain types of beer. Now, other types of beer will still make very bitter beers. So there's a Belgian bitter on next door, which has got quite high bitterness. And for that, we use quite a lot of hops, lots of pathogenic things you don't really want. So beer is a very safe thing to drink in moderation. It's never going to kill you, except over a long period of time if you make bad decisions. The reason it's been so successful as a drink over the years is that it's actually one of the safest things to drink because A, because it's been boiled and that sterilizes it, and B, because it has a low pH and bittering in it, which basically prevents all these pathogenic bacteria happening. So this is why you could essentially put some beer in a barrel and ship it up to India, and it would still be safe to drink many months later.
Can I ask you a question, first?
Yeah, please.
You were talking about how when you transport it, how long it lasts. So does it last longer than wine?
Well, it
in terms of, in casks and things, because I always thought with wine, the older the bottle, the better. How long can a bottle of beer last?
So there's two questions there. One is will it still be safe to drink after a long time, and one is will it taste nice? So wine can age very well. It can be stored for a long time and will often improve with age. A lot of beers will not do that.
Okay.
There are certain types of beer which do improve with age, and they tend to be things with very high strength, so in the same way like wine. Like very strong imperial stouts, things like that will tend to mellow out over time and develop a lot of interesting flavors. And the flavors you get, which you don't want in a lot of other beers, will actually complement those flavors. So often you'll get oxidization in that form, like sherry-like notes, which you don't really want in a hoppy beer, but actually you do want in a strong beer like a barley wine or an imperial stout. So those can last a long time, but even then, like they peak after maybe 10 years. You probably don't want to keep.
Well, I wouldn't want to keep it that long.
So that's like your maximum
So are these new craft beers where fruit and all of those things are added, are those ones, do they have a minimum shelf life?
Yeah, so anything like very hoppy, we tend to put a very short shelf life, and that's because all these interesting and nice flavor compounds in hops you get out will very quickly fade away.
Right.
So,
and is that with sours and all of those?
Sours tend to last a bit longer. So, so there's generally like two types of sours on the go at the moment. Like you have like fruit forward simple sours. Like they're called kettle sours, usually very simple acid profile, a lot of fruit in there. And they'll last a decent amount of time. The fruit tends to hold up better than hops.
Oh, okay.
But then you also have like these really interesting complex mixed fermentation sours. That's where you basically put a lot of different yeast and bacteria in there. You leave it a long time, so maybe it takes 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years, blend a bunch of beers together. And then you have these really interesting mixed fermentation sours, and those will last a long time. So those will often improve with age because these yeast and bacteria will very, very slowly be producing interesting flavor compounds over time. So maybe 5 years, 10 years later, those will taste really nice.
Okay, so like when you do your home brewing type things, do they have like a really minimum shelf life? Because he threw it out.
So part of what determines the shelf life is like how well you package it as well. So if you're doing homebrew, it's very hard to package in a way that doesn't introduce oxygen.
Right. Okay.
Oxygen is really bad for anything like hoppy or fruity or things like that because it will basically interact with all the flavor compounds and degrade them and cause you to have a not very nice tasting beer. It will also produce a bunch of off flavors that aren't nice at all, like cardboard, like I said, like sherry flavors.
Yeah.
So we try very hard to reduce oxygen as much as possible after fermentation to try and reduce any impact from that. So like our canning line is set up and we dial it in every run to be very careful about how you're doing that. If you're making a home brew and you're filling a bottle, it's very hard to do that. You can kind of counteract it by putting some more yeast in, some sugar, and getting the yeast to absorb that oxygen and re-ferment. But even then, you're still going to get some oxygen in there.
Okay. All right. It's enough. That's okay.
I've got lots of material on that. But
I was just asking the question.
No, it's fine. It's interesting to me.
Good.
And mostly because I spend a lot of time worrying about that kind of thing.
Yeah, okay. It's good to know.
How well our beer holds up is a really important question to us. So, like, we keep a lot of QA samples over time.
Yeah.
Like, we'll keep them warm, we'll keep them cold. There's a massive difference between, like, a can that's very hoppy that's kept cold at, like, 4 degrees C for a month versus a can that's kept warm.
Oh, really?
Really bad if it's warm.
So storage is really important.
Storage makes a big difference. So we try and use a lot of distributors and like retailers who will keep things cold because we know that's how it's going to taste best.
Okay.
We keep everything we package in a cold store over there. the entire time we have it. We keep in our bar, we have a cold store that all the beer stays in all the time at like 2 degrees C. And the idea of that is to basically maintain freshness for as long as possible. So it does make a big difference, and it can degrade very quickly.
Okay.
Does answer that?
Yeah,
That would have been the short answer.
No, that's good. No, I actually like it that your beers are kept cold, because when I first arrived to this country, everything was hot. I hated the beer.
There's obviously like cask beer is this kind of style that's been around for a long time, and where it's stored and served slightly warmer than beer is often nowadays stored and served. And that's usually about 10 or 11 degrees C.
I like a cold beer.
That's the kind of beer where you really want to consume it within like 3 weeks, because it will break quite fast because of that temperature.
Okay.
And cask beer, you kind of introduce oxygen to it when you dispense it, so you like stick a thing in the top and then you pull it through a handle and that draws oxygen in. So as soon as a cask beer goes on, it will then go bad very quickly after 2 or 3 days, so it needs to be turned around very fast. Whereas the beers we do in keg can last a long time, because they're basically packaged in a sealed container, again dispensed by gasking the outside and the beer coming out. So there's, at no point is the beer interacting with anything else, and that will hold up a long time if you keep it cold.
Okay, thank you.
So we buy these hops in, and these hops are very different to what the hops that used to be used in this country. So they used to use British hops, and in the same way that British wine isn't necessarily the best, British hops necessarily aren't the best. They suit certain styles of beer, like bitters and stuff, very well. But like when we're making a really big fruit-forward IPA or something like that, we want to use big, impactful American hops or Australian or New Zealand hops. If you have a genetically identical hop plant and you put it in the UK and you put it in America high, you can kind of keep it to a consistent flavor profile. They had it like genetically sequenced a few years ago, and it turns out it's actually 23 different strains of yeast now, probably started as one. So, over time you get a lot of mutation, you've got infection, things like that, but it still makes the beer they want it to make, so they're not really worried about it. And they make like a lot of cask beer, which probably doesn't matter if you've got some weird yeast in it, because it gets consumed within 3 weeks, so it's going to be fine. So it's very interesting, the different approaches used. Some people use fresh yeast each time because they want to keep it the same, but like I say, it's easier for us to really use yeast quite a lot. We have over the years used hundreds of different strains of yeast. At one point in these tanks we had about 18 different strains of yeast on the year. That was a bad time. It was very stressful. We don't do that anymore. We kind of try and stick to a couple. We will still change over time, like the lager yeast we're using and the ale yeast we're using. So we a few months ago changed over to a different strain of lager yeast, which is kind of this Munich Helles style strain. Before we're using a box strain. And you do see various differences that you see the flavour you get in the beer. We're constantly like experimenting and changing things like that to try and give us the best type. We were using an ale yeast.
Do you sell your beers all over the country? In supermarkets and places like that?
No, we don't sell to supermarkets.
You sell to independent?
Basically we do either on-site here or at the tap room in London, and then we do local deliveries in advance, like Chester, Liverpool, Manchester, around the north basically.
But the north, but not down south?
Down south we basically send pallets to distributors who will then distribute it for us.
Right.
Which again we try and use like people who do cold chains, so it always stays cold. But we don't sell it to supermarkets, and the main reason for that is A, well, we don't really have the capacity for it. B, we'd rather sell to smaller retailers. We don't have that capacity. And C, they're notorious for not keeping beer cold.
Cold, right.
Okay, so after we fermented things, pull it down a little bit, get the yeast out, and then we dry hop it. So again, we use a bunch of hops and we stick it in this thing here, which is called the hop gun. Looks like a rocket ship. The best thing about it. So we put quite a lot of hops in there. That'll take about 100 kilograms of hops. For a big tank like that, if we're making like a double IPA, we'll have to put about 160 kilograms in total. So we'll put 2 batches of hops in there, recirculate it. So basically, you put the hops in, pump the yeast out of the tank, through the hops and back into the tank, recirculate it for about 2 hours for each batch, push it back in the tank, and it can taste quite nice.
This is him getting us some beer. So how many has he done? Let's see here. Oh, we got 3 jugs. 3 jugs coming on our way. Yeah, let me taste. Let me taste first and see if I even want it.
There's like 2 or 3, and that's mine.
It's all right, but I ain't going for it.
It's all dry.
Yeah. See, if I'd have taken mine, you wouldn't have got none.
Okay, so this is a 4% pale ale, essentially. This is just finished fermentation, so finished fermentation maybe yesterday. It's got Wacker Hops, so this is the first set of our New Zealand hop usage.
Wacker Hops.
Yeah, we've got this hop called Wacker, which is one of the best hops in the world, and because of the we're getting it from a small supply in New Zealand, so they shipped them all our hops over at once. That means we got like 8 pallets of hops turn up the other day, which is very stressful when we've got a limited amount of cold store space, but we've got a very full cold store now full of hops, and that we'll use that over time.
Now we're trying a different beer. There we go.
It's under a decent amount of pressure, so it,
A spoon in that.
Yeah.
a little bit
Oh yeah. Wow.
Now I'll give it to my husband. Phil, no, down now. Yeah. Phil, this one's been dry hop, so you'll be able to tell the difference. He didn't like the unhopped, the undried.
stronger and
It's stronger.
So the tail goes.
yeah, the first double IPA was very good. Well, it was
Blind pig or something.
yes.
It's an ice cream.
You got anything in
It's an
there?
ice cream pale.
Sorry about that. It's under a bit of pressure in the tank as well.
Yeah.
I'll wait for it to settle.
Let it settle and then give me your opinion.
So this was dry hops on the wind. So pretty
It's still going to be quite cloudy.
Huh?
It's still going to be quite cloudy when it settles.
Well, it's going to be cloudy.
Yeah.
It's all right. It's meant to be cloudy. So, see, can you taste the difference?
Ooh,
You
yeah.
should be able to.
That is nice.
Is that nice?
That is very nice, yeah.
You like that one? All right. Let me just see. Let me have a sip.
I like this one.
It's much sweeter than the other one, but it's a lot stronger. That's going to be about 8%, I should think.
Oh, actually, it does taste better than the last one.
Generally, double IPA.
Oh no, that one's okay.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry.
They're not as harsh because.
Oh, I'm gonna take some of that one.
We've got 7,000 litres of it.
Oh, that's all right. Nobody's going to miss it.
So we're not gonna miss out. Okay. Yeah, I'll try some of this one.
Team meeting or
Yeah, it hasn't been named yet. That's usually last year.
All right, I'm going to try this one.
double IPA.
Yeah. Okay.
What was this one again?
So this is a double IPA, again with New Zealand hops. You might need a bit
of a head on that.
Yeah, just a touch.
It's under pressure.
Yeah, I'll take a touch. I'll have a little taste of this one because this one tasted good. All right, that's enough. Thank you.
Don't get too carried away.
Oh no, I won't get carried away. I'll just have a little tiny bit.
It's tequila, it'd be different.
Totally.
If everyone just wants to follow me around,
All right, let me taste
and
this.
then we can talk about this beer and then finish off.
Actually, this one tastes pretty good. This is nice.
Shall I pause it?
No, I'm still drinking.
Well, I did ask.
I'm still drinking. All righty, come on. I'll take it and follow me around. Now we're going to the next step. I guess this will be our canning. Here we go. So let's go over here. Oh, look at the factory. Excuse me. Okay.
We were talking earlier on about the quality control and getting all the different people to actually taste them. I presume that there would be a difference of opinion as to whether you want that smoother or whether you like that hoppy bite at the end, because it's a matter of tasting.
That's
isn't
definitely
it?
something we've played around with over the years, especially before we got the centuries where we had less control over that kind of hop bite. We definitely released some beers where had slightly more bite to them, and definitely some people like that, but also a lot of people don't like that. there's definitely some people, especially in certain breweries in America, that kind of associate that with fresh beer, good fresh beer.
Yeah.
Whereas personally for me, I'm very much of a fan of having like flavor impact without like aggressive hop bite, which I don't think adds anything to the beer. But people have different opinions on that, and that's fine. But I think we aim to have it like slightly softer finish these days, if we can.
Yeah.
It's also tricky because like you can get a beer with hop bite, will then over time lose it because the stuff is sediment out. You can also get this little depalletizer here, so it'll lift it up one layer at a time and push the cans off, which is great because it saves you having to do it all by hand, which is very slow. Runs it down here, and then it's just a little bit of a sterile air rinse here to get any, if there is any matter in the can, to get it out. Then we label before we fill. That's because it's very, the way this label works makes it very hard to put it on wet cans, so we do it before we fill the cans, which is a little bit wasteful, but generally works out better in the long run. Labels, we have a lot of difficulty with labels sometimes because when we do all these one-off beers, we like to put tasting notes on the labels, but also you have to kind of wait until the beer's ready to go before you can do the tasting notes. And getting labels, sticking a bunch of CO2 in it into the can before it fills it. Then we fill it with beer in here, and then we pulse a bit more CO2 through, and that causes the beer to foam up and basically fill the can entirely with non-oxygen. And it puts a little lid on it here, goes through here to these guys which seam the lid on, and then runs through, gets rinsed, and then we pack them into boxes manually over there. So it takes about 2 to 3 people to run a canning line, depending on how fast we're running it and how much is going wrong. Like with all packaging lines, things go wrong all the time. We're having a service on Monday to try and fix a bunch of stuff, but it's very slow. Cool, so that's basically everything. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, do you guys have to hire like graphic designers for these labels? Because nowadays the beer that you see, it is all about how it's looking, you know? It's like, to me, I think of about like old-fashioned album covers.
Yes. So we've always had seasonal artists. So we have a graphic designer who originally did our logo and does lots of the typesetting and layout of the labels. We've had seasonal artists throughout our existence. So we used to have different artists every 4 months.
Right.
And so all our beers would have artwork by that artist.
Yeah.
And now we do it every 6 months or so. So at the moment, you'll see like all these ones, the artwork and all those labels over there.
Yeah.
Done by one artist.
Okay. Now they're credited on the cans?
All the cans have artwork by credit.
Okay. And is all your beer vegan?
All our beer is vegan, yes.
Is all beer vegan?
No.
Because I've noticed people say it's vegan, and I'm thinking, well, I thought it was all vegan.
Yeah, so it used to be. The reason beer wasn't vegan is because people used to make findings in cask beer that were made from fish guts, essentially.
Oh, okay. So it's all down to that.
But these days, the reason beer isn't vegan is because people put lactose in. So lactose is an unfermentable sugar, and people put it in there to sweeten beer, so it won't get re-fermented. So you see a lot of
Can
like
go horribly wrong.
meat. Well, I'm not a big fan of it personally. We don't use it, so I can complain about it. But I'm not a fan of it as a general concept. But, people do a lot of things like milkshake IPAs and sours where they'll sweeten them with some lactose.
Gotcha.
There's definitely a trend in certain parts of the world to have very sweet beers.
But that's all labeled on the can if it's a vegan beer. So if it's not a V on it, it's got some guts in it.
Because lactose is an allergen, you have to declare it on the
Right.
so
Yeah.
you'll always know.
Okay.
I've got one very obvious question. Why Cloudwater?
What the name?
The name.
My boss came up with it. That's why.
Okay. That's good enough answer.
It's apparently based on a Zen Buddhist proverb.
Okay.
But I don't know the precise origin. People say because your beers are hazy, but no, because we used to not make hazy beer, so it's largely appropriate. Although someone did once ask me at a festival, how do you get the water from the clouds?
Just say, well, it just happens. It's called rain.
So that's that.
Okay. How did your collaboration with Brewdog come about?
So we've known those guys for quite a long time. We've done a few different collaborations with them over the years. So I went up there a few years ago and we brewed on their big kit and did a collaboration up there, which is the one that just rebrewed recently actually. And then we've done a couple down here where we've collaborated with local Brewdog bars, and we just got one in, just packaged one actually, that's going to be at the Brewdog Collab Fest soon. With an amusing name that I can't reveal yet.
That's cool.
It's like with all our collaborations, it's based on relationships. People meet in the industry and like and respect, and So we've done a lot of collaborations over the years with a lot of different breweries. And now we've got our beer festival that we do we're going to do again in February this year. And basically all the attendees are there, people who we collaborated with over the years. Apart from a couple of exceptions, but aside from that, almost everyone there we've collaborated with, which I think is basically the premise of the festival. But yeah, again, it's just people we meet and want to do interesting stuff with. Collaborations are an interesting thing because like people will come over and you'll say like how much work do people do, but really it's mostly the recipe design that the collaboration happens, and the actual production will just be done by whoever's like whose brew site has been doing that will do the production. And people will stand around and post nice pictures, but really it's whoever's working it will do the work. But yeah, the actual collaborations and the idea and the recipe and like following that.
And do you ever do any collaborations or beer pairing to food? Because you know how that is, it's becoming quite popular, that it'd be quite, trendy, really.
We've done a fair few events where, like, with restaurants and things like that.
But you say we recommend this to go with this and this to go with that.
Yeah, when we do those events, we'll talk to the chefs there and we'll, like, talk about what beer will go well with stuff and we'll come up with a menu for it. I mean, we don't specifically, when we're releasing beers, we don't really give suggestions for food, but when we do the specific events, we will come up with a menu and work with those guys and try and like match interesting beers to food.
And do you think there's certain types of beers that are best, say, for marinades and things like that?
Yeah,
I'm asking because I need one.
Anything bad will cook really well. Like the problem if you're gonna like cook a beer, you really don't want to waste good beer on it because it's just not enough.
Now I'm talking about just marinating in it to get that flavor to seep into it.
Yeah, you can like dark beers are often good for that. Like Belgian style beers are often good for that kind of thing. You can get like really those kind of flavors so really well. Hoppy beers I find in general are bad for cooking. They don't really well. The flavors
they don't. You say so. Avoid that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like malt or yeast forward tends to work quite well.
What about sours?
Sours probably would work.
Yeah, because I'm thinking sours.
Sours go with pork, I think.
Yeah, I think they're probably better for like drinking with the food. Like
yeah. No, I get that.
Like having the beer and having the food separately and then matching them together rather than using the beer in the cooking. It's quite hard to do.
Okay.
There are definitely some Belgian style dishes that use beer effectively.
Right.
Like roasting some rabbit in chimay is a shout.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions? Cool.
Okay, so we are now leaving the industrial estate, better known as Cloudwaters.
Oh, this bit.
Yeah. So, what did you think of it, Phil?
I thought it was really interesting. I enjoyed it a lot.
You enjoyed it.
I did. Yeah.
So, can you sign off for me in the Momma Cherri way?
A lot of peace, a lot of love, a lot of beer, and a whole lot of love to Momma Cherri's peeps.
Okie dokie. And so, from the Mama, goodbye.